Hey everyone, it's Rachel from Merrick Makings. Thanks for joining our video hop. I'm using the Enduring Beauty stamps and mask for today's card, as well as the hexagon punch. So I've punched out 3 of these in basic white, and I've matched up my colours to my DSP that I'll be using. I'm using Crumb Cake and Petal Pink. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use double-sided tape, and I'm going to adhere the 3 hexagon punched shapes into a pattern onto that, and I'm using double-sided tape. Now this will make it easier later on to remove them. So the whole technique for today is basically using a collection of punches to stamp onto, so that you get a really lovely image that's across different panels. Another technique I'm using today, which is really popular at the moment, is using the blending brushes and a mask to do some colouring in. So the Enduring Beauty bundle has actually been around for a little while now. It is one of my favourites. I was a bit late getting it, but each one does actually have a number. You can probably see on that one it is number 5. So I don't do things in order. It is entirely up to you, but I just find lining up the middle stamen part of the flower really easy first. And I'm just going really lightly. So each layer builds up and builds up. So whichever layer you put down first will end up probably being your darkest layer. I do find that in this particular mask set, the leaves are much easier to line up and ink than the flowers, because there's a little bit more detail in the line drawing of the flowers. They are a bit trickier to line up, but at the end of the day it doesn't really matter. The trick to this too is to use your ink in both directions. So you're going both in a clockwise manner and an anti-clockwise manner, and this sort of spreads your ink quite evenly around that image. And the other thing is just don't oversaturate your brush. Just take your time, add a little bit, and keep going backwards and forwards between them. That way you get a much more even tone on your image in the end. I really love this idea. You could do it with any shapes. If you've got matching shapes, if you just want to do some panels, it looks really effective on a card. You can, when you set it on the card, you can have as much or as little of a border around each shape as well. But because you've stamped it as one solid image to begin with, it looks like you've cut it out, but this saves the hassle, particularly with a punch, of trying to figure out how to cut out all the elements so that it does actually line up properly. So I like this little trick, and using the window sheeting just means that it's all anchored together and it doesn't move around. And how pretty is that? So the Petal Pink is definitely one of my favorite pinks. It's very pale, and you can see I'm using the Country Woods collection, which matches the Country Birdhouse bundle. And this DSP is really pretty. It has a wooden plank kind of feel, and I really liked this one with all the colours in it. So some of the colours in this one, I think it was Pool Party that I ended up using as well, but it does have Misty Moonlight, and that would make a really lovely colour to also go around the outside. So I have peeled off these, and if you're following the instructions along the bottom, I'm probably not following them exactly in my audio that I'm doing. But yes, you do ink around the edges in all that white space. So it's looking like tiles almost, I guess. You've got that element of dimension by inking the edges. And don't worry too much. Your ink, when you're doing this, does not go or have an effect over the top of your inked image already, because you are just adding it. But do take your time, add it bit by bit, and lay it back on your card just so you can see how it's all set up ready for adhering. Now the card itself is a fairly basic layout. I wanted that DSP and the images to shine without being too complicated in adding extra layers. So it is a basic, I think it's Early Espresso background matting layer, and a very thin matting at that. I've only left a very small border, and then I'm just grabbing the DSP and adhering these down. I have popped one of the panels up and the other two panels I'm gluing down, and you can see that very small border or gap between the images. And I'm sorry, it is a little bit off camera. I'm pulling it right towards me when I'm filming this so I can get them all lined up properly. Once your little panels or shapes are on the front of your card, it really is quick to get this card going. It's adhering just those few layers together and then adding a sentiment towards the end. So I have used the Early Espresso yet again to emboss a white sentiment. So if you don't have the embossing kit, which includes a tray and the embossing buddy, the little powder, I would highly suggest it. It saves you so much time. The embossing powder itself doesn't stick to everything. So I have gone and grabbed my Simply Said stamp set. I love this. It's a brand new stamp set that's come out recently in the new annual catalogue. And this one just has all these generic and very simple font sentiments that you can use. And I've chosen Thinking of You. And I keep, does anyone remember these Tupperware containers? I keep my embossing powders in these little, I think they were cake slice Tupperware containers that I inherited from my mum. So they're the perfect thing, and a little wooden spoon inside it. You're going to use your heat tool to melt that embossing powder, and it does take a second, and it's probably a bit hard for you to see, but you can tell by the colour change, it does change, and I like to heat it up just that extra second or two to make it nice and smooth, and then you're going to go with your hand and buff off the rest of that non-stick powder that you've used. So trim your sentiment back a little bit, and we're going to actually banner cut either end. Now, it's entirely up to you how big you want your sentiment. I didn't want it overpowering my entire card. So sometimes I use a really large sentiment, and sometimes I use a really small one. In this case, it's a reasonably small one, but it will stand out because we're going to add a little bit of bling. Of course, that's kind of my thing, is we add a little bit of bling, and some of my favorite bling is the gold and silver twine. So that, I don't know if it's still available now. I know I grabbed several spools of it before in a sale, so I have plenty on hand. And I'm going to, as I do with all my videos and all my cards, to create a element, I guess, with the twine. I'm simply going to pop up my sentiment, and I'm going to tie a bow, a small bow, and attach that from my gold twine to the back with a glue dot. It works perfectly for me. It does mean you get exactly the looping and tails that you want hanging out. I just can't mess with, like, people loop and loop and loop and then stick it down and like go round and round with the twine. I cannot do that. I can't even explain it, let alone do it. But this works for me. So it's simple as putting your 2-dimensional dots on there, adhering with the glue dot, and then sticking it down onto your card. So of course I couldn't finish the card without adding some kind of additional small element. Normally it's rhinestones. Today I have chosen some matte resin dots. These ones, again, I think have been sitting in my drawer. There are so many out there anyway, and you don't forget, you can colour them. If you get pale ones, you can colour them with your Stampin' Blends. But for today, I managed to get one that's got several different basic colours, including a smoky slate. Now, smoky slate is one of the colours that are used in this DSP. You can see I've used quite a lot of this one because it's also got basic black, which is very hard because you don't tend to get basic black in many things as far as gemstones and things that you can add to a card. So I really love this one. You can see I've used quite a few, so I am running a bit low. But I just love the pop that these give and the contrast against that white. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. Please join the rest of the others for the hop, and join me next time for another video. Thank you.